What's poppin', y'all? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Weekly, our first video of 2022. I'm your host, Pee Wee the Plug, 140 through the wire, #1 Knicks fan in the world. And ironically, as a Knicks fan, my first video of the year is going to be talking about the Bulls. Not just the Bulls, we're going to talk about specifically Demar Derozan. But before we get to Demar Derozan, I have to give credit where credit is due. And the Chicago Bulls are killing it right now. And it's because of their front office. I remember when they made the changes a couple years ago, and you know, they were talking the talk, but now they're walking the walk, and we're seeing you know, the results of that. And I love that for that Chicago Bull fan base. Obviously, I'm from and live in Chicago. I know a lot of Bull fans, and I just love to see the excitement within the fan base. This is what every fan base and every sports league around the world wants. They want to be given a chance to compete at some type of level and to have some type of excitement, something to look forward to, something to cheer for, some false hope, something, rather than just sitting around letting games go by and letting free agents go by and just being a team that sits on their hands. But the Bulls were aggressive. They went out last year, traded for Nikola Vucevic. This offseason, they went out and they got Lonzo Ball. And because they made the trade last year for Vucevic, it helped them go out and get DeMar DeRozan, which is the guy that we're going to be talking about. And now the Chicago Bulls are hooping. They're #1 in the East as of today. DeMar DeRozan has made 2 back-to-back buzzer beaters in the last 2 days, which is kind of crazy because he made one in 2 different years. The Pacer one-legged 3 was 2021, and then the Wizards 3 over Bradley Beal was 2022. So DeMar DeRozan is having a hell of a week, to say the least. But the thing I really want to talk about with DeMar DeRozan and this whole Chicago Bulls situation is the blueprint that he followed, right? So I'm a big DeMar DeRozan fan. If you don't know, I love DeMar DeRozan. Was one of my favorite players before Paul George really became my guy. And I've been watching DeMar DeRozan since he was in high school. Played with Master P's son, Lil Romeo. Had super crazy highlight tapes, ball his life type shit, just dunking on everybody. Super athletic. Went to USC. Played there for a year and then was drafted by the Raptors. Was always an exciting player. You know, a guy that me and my brother loved because he would dunk on people, was fun to play with in 2K. But then over the years, as I got older, I began to see his game mature. And he was really working on his game to become much more than just an athletic wing or guard, and really had, you know, the footwork, the mid-range shot, started getting to the free throw line, and he was really becoming a polished guy. And really following the Kobe mantra, and I love Kobe, so that made him become one of my favorite guards and players. And then ultimately, we saw the whole situation where he was traded from Toronto to San Antonio, and they won the championship, and he was with the Spurs in this weird timing phrase and timeline for the Spurs where they were getting extremely young. They were competing a little bit, you know, making the playoffs, but it wasn't what we were used to over the years. And then the writings on the wall became kind of clear that DeMar DeRozan was going to have to move on just because the timelines didn't match. His last contract, probably the last hoorah for him, was obviously going to be him going somewhere where he was going to be able to compete at a higher level. My biggest concern as a DeMar DeRozan fan at that time, and I talked about it plenty of times on a podcast, on Twitter, and in other videos around that time, was him choosing his destination. There was a guy a year or so before him who was in the same situation, who I think laid out one of the most perfect blueprints for guys in the DeMar DeRozan tier. DeMar DeRozan is in a tier that is kind of weird in NBA standards. He's not a superstar LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant tier. But he's also a bit above an all-star. So he's in this weird tier between all-star and superstar that I think a couple other players fall in line at. There's a bunch of players y'all probably can name that is right in that tier too, and it's very weird and murky, and it's hard to explain, but y'all know the type of guys I'm talking about. And I feel like when those type of guys get into free agency, or it's obvious they're going to be traded or moved from their team, a lot of them fall for this bad bait of joining up and clicking up with some other stars, where like we heard all these conversations, even with Jimmy Butler. When Jimmy Butler was kind of in free agency, it was like, oh, he should go with AD and LeBron to the Lakers. Or I don't know if, Anthony Davis was there, I believe. Or maybe it was the same summer Anthony Davis did go there. He should go there and team up with LeBron and whatever. He should stay in Philly because it's Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and him. They would have a nice little trio in the East. You know, it was all these just situations where people wanted Jimmy Butler to go and kind of team up with people. It was so many. Anytime that type of tier of player like I just described, DeMar DeRozan, Jimmy Butler, those type of guys, people always want to put them with. They should go with Dame and CJ. They should go with the Clippers. Remember when it was Chris Paul and Blake? They should go with the Clippers. He should go to Houston. That's what it was for Jimmy. He should go to Houston. I think Jimmy's from there. He should go to Houston with Chris Paul and James Harden. They would have a little trio there. People always want this weird tier of player between superstar and all-star to like be the cherry on top for a big three or like go click up. And Jimmy Butler did some of the best shit I've ever seen, and I always give him credit for it. And I don't think he gets enough credit from the basketball world, where he went to the Miami Heat. He went, did his homework, and he found an organization and a team that fit him, number one. The type of person he is, the culture, the locker room, the environment. You know, Jimmy Butler comes from being developed by the Bulls, the Thibodeau era. You know, Joakim Noah, Luol Deng, Derrick Rose, Taj Gibson, Nazr Muhammad. They're cussing each other out in the locker room. They're yelling at each other and pushing each other during practice. They're really holding each other accountable. He comes from that type of culture and environment, which is why there was friction when he went to the Timberwolves, because they were different. They were younger. They weren't used to that. They weren't used to accountability, responsibility, and being held accountable and yelling at each other and pushing each other. That was new for them. So when he started doing it, it was weird and people got emotional and it was drama and he had to eventually leave. Then he went to the Philadelphia 76ers, which is a great example of fool's gold, where we as basketball fans, basketball people, and even basketball players and agents and GMs fall for the same exact shit, where situations look better on paper than they actually are. And Philadelphia, we found out after the fact, was one of those situations. And thankful enough that Jimmy Butler had, you know, talked about it on a JJ Redick podcast and different interviews, why it was fool's gold and why it looked so much better on paper. But he told us that some of their qualities in their environment and culture was very similar to the Timberwolves, where they're a bit younger. They're first overall picks. They're highly touted. Nobody's ever held them accountable. There's no real leader because you can't say anything to anybody without anybody getting offended and emotional. So he didn't fit there either. And quite honestly, that team looked good on paper, but they didn't go to a finals. They didn't compete for a championship, anything like that. Though they did play the Raptors pretty well and they lost under the doink. They lost, right? And he took all of that information, and even with the Chris Paul and James Harden shit in Houston, he said, nope. Houston doesn't need what I give. They need me because I'm a name. I'm Jimmy Butler, and if you put us all on paper, me, Chris Paul, James Harden, it'll work. Boom, boom, or whatever. But instead, he made a pivot. He went to the Heat, a culture that is very similar to the Chicago Bull culture that he came up in. A team that needed everything that he had to offer. They needed a guy who would want the ball in the fourth quarter and take late game shots. They needed a guy that would be a leader and could be the quote-unquote best player, all-star face of the team. They needed a big brother to be there for Bam Adebayos and guys like that. They needed that guy, and he went there, and what happened? We've seen Jimmy Butler hit a climax of his success as an individual player that I don't think we ever expected. This is a guy who they made a finals run, and I know a lot of people on Twitter or whatnot, whatever, they like to downplay it because it was the bubble. But the matter of the fact is, Jimmy Butler led a Miami Heat team with help from Bam, Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic. They had a really good team, but he was the face of that and the leader of that. And he led them to a championship appearance where he put it all on the floor. This guy was averaging triple doubles and playing out of his mind. And the Heat now are still a team that people talk about that can beat anybody in a series. You know what I mean? At full strength. So I look at that situation and I look at Jimmy Butler and the result of that, and I think, man, that's a really good blueprint for other guys to follow. I'll give you another example. This guy wasn't a free agent like Jimmy Butler, but this guy is a guy that's going to be done well by any organization and get what he wants. If he doesn't want to go there, go there. The team will listen to him, and that's Chris Paul, right? Chris Paul was traded to the Phoenix Suns or whatever, but I think that was a great situation. Again, it's not a team where all the rumblings was about, man, should Chris Paul go and try to click up with LeBron and they should do the banana boat thing and this and that and the third? Or no. Went to a team, the Suns, who don't have a rich history. You know what I mean? But when you watch them in that bubble, the 8-0 run that they had, and, you know, the progression they was making before we even got to the bubble, you know, minus 8.5 to miss all of those games that year, the 20 to 25 games, you saw that Phoenix was kind of putting something together. And all they were really missing was exactly what Chris Paul had to offer: the leadership, the game management, the point guardness, somebody to control everything for them, the clutchness at the end of the game, because Devin Booker being the only guy was so fucking predictable that a lot of teams could stop it. And then look at him. Same thing as Jimmy Butler. Ultimate climax of success that I don't think any of us could have predicted in this late of Chris Paul's career. The first time ever guy gets to play in the championship, and though they lost, they pushed the Milwaukee Bucks to 6 games and gave us a worldwide run that we all love so much. And we talking about Chris Paul, who was played with David West, Tyson Chandler, Peja Stojakovic. Those teams were really, really good. He was damn near MVP that year. We seen him play on Stat Clippers teams. Him, Blake, DeAndre, JJ Redick, coached by Doc Rivers, championship head coach. Those teams ain't really do shit. Never made it to the finals. The Rockets, D'Antoni, him, Harden. Those teams ain't make it to the finals. And though they had really close chance, injuries suck or whatever, fact of the matter is he finally got to play on that stage, and we got to see him there on a team that I don't think was the most obvious choice. I think if we go back and we look at the reports and we did some research, I think a lot of reports would not have Phoenix Suns as the #1 team Chris Paul should be eyeing, or the #1 team that should be trying to trade for him. Probably want to be the Suns. Not saying the Suns don't come up on the list or was out of this world or nobody saw it coming, but I think a lot of people had him going other places. And then we now get to Demar Derozan. As a fan, I spoke about it a bunch of times, like I said, on the podcast, Twitter, other previous videos, whatever, of how I wanted him to go by the Jimmy Butler blueprint, where you get into free agency and you take your time, you do your homework, and you figure out what's a place that, #1, I fit, the environment I fit in. It's where I want to be. I don't feel out of place. I don't feel out of pocket. I'm not walking on eggshells. And #2, everything that I have to offer with my game is exactly what this team needs. I don't want to go to a team that needs me to be a corner 3-point shooter if that's not what I bring to the table. And I think DeMar DeRozan did a very good job, and he picked the Chicago Bulls. Because if y'all remember, there was a lot of other teams people had for DeMar to be lined up. I remember people talking about him going to homecoming. They were photoshopping him in Laker jerseys, right? It was, shit, should he go with the Blazers? Find a way for him to click up with Dame and CJ. Don't think that would have been a good one. There were so many different things. And I was a guy who was like, listen, I would love for DeRozan to entertain the idea of going to a Memphis if they had enough money to play with. They can make some money open up. You know, take some pressure off Ja, be a late game shot creator for them, a Bull type team. You know, I was thinking about those because I was looking at Jimmy Butler's blueprint. Not so much clicking up and joining. I think they was even talking about him being in Brooklyn before James Harden was there. This is some weird random shit. I don't know. It was just some bullshit. Just had DeMar DeRozan going to all type of silly ass teams, clicking up the Bucks or whatever. You're just out of this world shit. And I was like, man, I just hope and hope and hope. Atlanta was another team I had in mind for DeRozan because of the spacing they provided, because he was putting up good numbers and efficient numbers with a lack of spacing in San Antonio. So I'm thinking, man, if you put him with some spacing, Trae Young, and man, out of this world. But instead, he chose the Bulls, which I wasn't mad at all. But look at the results. They're #1 in the East. I don't think they're going to come out of the East, but shit, just because it's what I think don't mean that this was going to happen. And look at the success. DeMar DeRozan is one of the #1 talked about things right now in the sports world, especially the basketball world. He's looking like he's going to be an all-star starter. The Bulls are having ultimate success. This is everything you asked for. And then you look at other situations where it didn't work. And we have one right in our face, Russell Westbrook. The prime example of what I'm talking about. Where a team like the Lakers, LeBron and AD, are so desperate to have star power that they just want Russell Westbrook. They wanted DeRozan, they wanted Russell, they wanted Chris Paul. They wanted anybody that has some type of star, all-star resume and that could bring some type of clout and energy into the building. And that's what they got with Russell Westbrook. And they said, we're going to prioritize the stardom over the fit. And all basketball people, we were like, this is interesting. Because on paper, how the hell is this going to work? But we're going to see how we're going to give it a chance. And sure enough, like we all thought, it's looking like a disaster. And it's not looking that promising. Even with Anthony Davis being injured and protocols and shit that has happened, I understand. But even when they were at full strength out of the gate, this didn't look that well. And it's an example of not prioritizing the fit, the culture, the environment. And I think that's going to be the next interesting chapter for some guys like Russell Westbrook. Because this Lakers shit, it can't be the ending and it can't be the answer. Even I look at John Wall, when his time is up with Houston, where is he going to go? I remember Carmelo, right? Didn't decline off crazy, but he left the Knicks. And it took him a while to really find himself because he was trying to join ships. Paul George and Russ, I'm going to go rock with them. Disaster. James Harden and CP3. Disaster. Then he got his phone going with the Portland Trailblazers, rebuilt himself, found a nice home and a nice situation, a nice role. Now he's at the Lakers. He's thriving. Guys are going to have to follow these blueprints of not clicking up and looking at what can be. Man, we're going to be the big three and we're going to make run. No. Stop chasing the bag. 5 million here, 5 million. 20 million is 20 million. Find that fit, that environment, and go be the best player you can be. And I think it helps the legacy and the career much more than the failed attempt of being a big three or a power team or whatever you want to call it. And I think those three examples of Jimmy Butler, Chris Paul, and now Demar Derozan are solidifying that blueprint for the next players who are either in that tier of I'm not a superstar, but I'm a little bit above an all-star, like the Jimmy Butlers, DeMar DeRozans. I guess you could probably put Paul George there after the injury, even though he bounced back to MVP conversation with the Thunder and balling out his mind, whatever. But y'all know the players that belong in that tier. This is setting the tone. Instead of going and click up with 2 other names or 2 other all-stars because it's going to look good and it's had star power, fuck that. Find a culture and an environment that fits you and a team that needs what your game offers. And I think DeMar DeRozan hit it right on the head. And as a guy who's been a fan of DeMar DeRozan for a very long time and who wanted him to do exactly that, boy, did he do it. And you speak on environment and culture, listen to people who have played with DeMar DeRozan and what they have to say about him. Look at the relationship with Kyle Lowry. Look at the relationship with Rudy Gay, who played with him for a short time in Toronto. Listen to how DeJounte Murray speaks about him from their time in San Antonio. Listen to how Zach LaVine speaks about him right now with the Bulls. If you know anything about DeMar DeRozan and how others speak on him, he's a big brother, brotherly type of guy. And this Bulls environment is exactly allowing him to be that and allowing him to put his arm around guys, not in a Jimmy Butler way. That ain't everybody's type of way to get down, but more in a brotherly love way. And DeMar DeRozan nailed it. So that's my thing. The Bulls doing their thing. I'm excited for them and their fan base. They deserve it. I think basketball is a good place when the Bulls, the Lakers, Knicks are all doing their thing. Lakers and Knicks ain't on shit, but the Bulls are doing their thing. And much love to them. But most importantly, man, DeMar DeRozan. I'm really happy and proud for him because, like I said, I've been a fan of his for a very long time. And to see him have that success, it's refreshing and it feels good. But also, in the back of that, it's the blueprint that he's solidifying after Jimmy, Chris, and now him. And as we go forward, there's going to be guys in that same tier and that same caliber trying to figure out their next move or the last run of their career or it's going to be a declining superstar like in the Russell Westbrook type of mode, who's going to have to figure out, where can I go to be the most impactful version of myself? Is that clicking up with 2 other guys and it don't really make sense? We don't know how it's going to work, but we'll figure it out later. Or is it me really doing my homework, sacrificing location, sacrificing the publicity of not being on a big 3-ass team, and you know, doing what I do on some Jimmy Butler Heat shit, DeMar Chicago bullshit. DeMar DeRozan would be a household name everywhere if he had went to the Lakers. You know how that goes. Russell Westbrook face can't stay out of the headlines, win or loss. But chose that route. Chris Paul, Phoenix. It's not the necessarily ideal destination, but man, look what it's done for him. And I hope other guys follow suit, and I hope the Bulls keep it up. Want to see DeMar DeRozan reach that ultimate success that the others 2 before him got to. And that's all, man. That's all. Appreciate y'all watching. Let me know y'all thoughts and opinions after viewing this. Am I tripping? Do y'all like that blueprint? Should guys continue to chase the thing, the big 3 shit? What are some other examples, the good ones and the bads, like I named? What's coming to y'all mind? 2022, we here. I took some time off. I wasn't feeling well. I needed a little break to get rejuvenated for the new year. And boom, bam, bam, I'm back. I'm ready. Let's take this content and this channel to new heights this year. I'm reaching and looking to get to that 50K and then 100K milestone. So lock in with me, rock with me. Let's take it up. I'm back. I'm better. I'm ready. Love y'all, man. Pee Wee the Plug, NBA Weekly. I'm out. Peace.